Right, shall we start?
Yeah, I think it's fair to say that the recording of this interview is much more complicated than the making of An Evening Without Kate Bush.
That's ridiculous. I can work Final Cut Pro, but I can't work Facebook Live anymore. It's like, what the hell is going on? And before we start, I had a ceremonial thing because
Oh,
I got bought this by a friend at Christmas. I was like, we have to burn it now. Okay, we
yeah.
can begin finally. There we go. Anyway, hello. I haven't seen you for ages.
I know. Was that not the Soho Theatre gift that I sent you?
I don't know. Was it? Oh,
Yeah.
no, it might have been. Isn't that weird?
Yeah.
I thought it was our mutual friend Sarita.
Oh, I think I sent one to you and one to John Mackay, but I did also send you a black penis candle.
Did
So
you?
you
That's
may
gone.
that's gone.
That melted.
Yeah.
Right. So we should talk about Kate Bush.
Your background is much more exciting than mine. We are just moved house. Yes, it is nice to see you because it's weird. We have this very intensive time in the making room, and then when the show is first up, loads and loads of contact, and then of course, then it just sort of births and disappears into the world, and then we hear on social media. I'll
Yeah.
sometimes do weird messages of strange things that have happened.
Yeah, and also because you've moved, but because we share Facebook feeds and Twitter, don't we? We share the accounts obviously, and we keep an eye on things. So it's like we're married, aren't we? We're now separated because you've gone to live with another man in another house.
I like it when you post on social media because I think your posts. I tend to sort of chat to the people I've met at the show, but I like that you tend to get back into the original spirit of the piece and post quite sort of quirky things, and you're always looking for really like good fan art and things like that. So
Yeah, it
yeah.
is. It's my nerd. It's my phone has learned that I'm a nerd because it sends me loads of Facebook Kate Bush stuff that's going on.
You've got different parenting styles, and I think that is
Yeah. Should we go from the beginning? A very good place to start. Should we
yeah.
chart it?
Yeah, because we had a very nice question on my other Facebook page about how we met, and ironically, we met via Facebook back when it was not a hot mess, because you put a
Mm,
post out looking for actors, didn't you? For a
yeah, it was probably 2011 or even 2012, and
yeah.
it was for a workshop. That was it. I was working with a friend of mine, and we wanted to make a play about a boy who lived in a dress, and nobody really noticed that he was in a dress, but that was the kind of the concept, and it was called The Boy in the Dress, I think, which I think probably was stolen by somebody for another play at some point. I'm
Yeah,
sure I've heard of it
I think
before.
you were ahead of your time.
So we did it, didn't we? But it never actually came to fruition, did it? But it was a really lovely weekend, wasn't it? It was a really great 2 day. Like all of us, I think, have worked together again since. Bizarrely, it was an accumulation of 7 people, wasn't it? And we just had a riot. And then we actually officially went on to the next one. I think was Goldsmiths.
Yeah.
I was looking for performers to direct and to be in a new musical I was directing at Goldsmiths, and it was called A New Day. And you played a mother with a forgetful son, if I remember.
And 100 post-it notes. I seem to remember doing a lot of wandering around, which as anyone who's ever shared anything about my making process, there's always a lot of post-it notes. So I was quite at home, really. I
Yeah,
think you
you
had a
were
very
in a
short-term
box.
memory. Yeah.
Post notes, weren't you? Yeah. And it was written by Tom Lees. It was a very, very beautiful musical, actually, wasn't it? It was very, very well crafted and so lovely. About a boy who lost his memory every time he woke up in the morning. It was lovely, really, really great. Then where did we go? Then it was Julie.
And so Julie was a funny one. I was out in Australia doing Cabaret Whore, which was my sort of multi-character show, and a wonderful producer, Richard Carroll, we were sort of sitting in a motel room and we said, who couldn't you make a show about? Who's like untouchable? Because we'd been to see Simply Barbara by Stephen Brimley. This is my fiance, Paul, who's joining the live
Guest
chat.
star.
And we said, well, you couldn't make a show about Julie Andrews because her voice is unique, and you just, and then we looked and there weren't many shows about her. So anyway, he and I birthed the idea. I spent 9 months doing research, and I presented what I affectionately call my Wikipedia Live with Songs version of the show, which was really my musical collaborator Michael Wilson and I just kind of like doing a whistle stop tour through her life. And I think it was about an hour and 20 minutes long, and I had a different director lined up to direct the show, but you came to offer feedback and support, and we met the next day, and your feedback and your ideas were so brilliant, and I just thought, I'm an idiot, I've got the wrong director. And you said, I'm slightly kicking myself for not throwing my hat in the ring to direct it.
Mm.
And then a little light bulb moment, and as it turned out, due to the way that we were going to make it, which is often, it's very rare for us to get a solid 4 weeks to work on something. It's usually a few days here, a few days there, which actually I kind of like that gestation time between rehearsals. And so I was able to graciously and with no offense caused let the other director go, and then messaged you. And so that was how we started.
Mm.
And really, without you, it would still be Wikipedia Live with songs.
And also, weirdly, you then moved across the road from me in
Yeah.
Stockwell, which is very strange. Like in London, any Londoners on watching this will know that is really weird. You literally moved 100 meters away from me, and we didn't know that we were on the same street, which
Still
is
didn't realise that it was all part of the plan. And that was a very interesting process, partly because it was about someone who was alive, and because I had the kind of research, I'd done all the research, so I had my head full of all these facts. And you were the perfect collaborator because you said, right, well, I'm not the expert, but I'm the custodian of the story. So what's the experience of the audience? What kind of story are we telling? And so occasionally I'd run into facts, and it's been very interesting working on the Bobby Kennedy experience, where you are the custodian and the expert on the facts. And although it was a different making process, that outside eye to go, yeah, I know that's interesting, but that's not the journey that we're on. So we did a couple of weeks without music, of really just interrogating the style. And I think you made me do about 100 potential different beginnings of that show. I mean, there were so many different ways to tell the story. And you set me improvisations like, tell me this story as a chalk penguin from Mary Poppins. Or you kept throwing things that were non-literal, but it absolutely I mean, there is a photo of me in the fetal position on the floor.
Yes, because you were doing the birthing, which in fact is in the show, isn't it? Because we kind of like look at her operation, as it were. Yeah, that was it. It's a show that all three of us feel really fond. You know, we have fond memories of it, isn't it? And it's still around, which is good. Where did we go next? Then we did something else. We did Royal Vauxhall, potentially. Desmond's show.
Yeah, we had some conventional actor-director relationships.
Yeah.
Which is so different.
Then we did Night Bus, Linda Marlowe, or maybe that was the other way around. And then maybe other things. But the thing with the Kate Bush actually was actually post Julie Maddie Deeply, because Richard was over from Australia, wasn't he, for Julie Maddie Deeply, and I floated the idea. I was like, something in it, and then it just got lost because of time and jobs and careers, stuff like that. And then fast forward, it was 20. We'd been flirting with the idea again, haven't we, of doing a Kate Bush based inspired show because of our love of Kate Bush. And then it was 2014. And I sent you a kind of a pitch and went, this is where I think we're going with this. Sent it. And the next morning, Kate Bush announced she was coming back on the tour.
It was a strange thing. I remember, actually, I think I was in Australia for another job, and you'd sent me Graham Thompson's Under the Ivy, which is just the best biography of any musician, because it's not about her life story. It's about her making process. And I read this book and was just totally obsessed. And we did some making together, I think, before she announced, because I know we did some work on it, and then we felt it would be too cynical. People would think, oh, well, they've only made this show because she's coming back to do the Hammersmith dates. But my memory is that we'd already done some work with Matthew Floyd Jones, one half Spanish, and we'd actually spent some time together working on it. It was going to be a 2-person piece.
Yeah, it was called Kate Like.
Yeah.
And we did one secret sharing.
We did do a secret sharing. But that was great. And I think that's really interesting, that you have to have the right mode to tell the right story. And there are loads of different ways to do it. But ultimately, we decided, much as he is the most wonderful, gorgeous human being, that it needed to be a solo show.
Yeah. I can't remember that. Yeah, I mean, I can't remember the chronological events, as it were. But there was definitely a thing of sending that kind of last pitch idea to you. And then she announced. And for some reason, again, we just paused again, didn't we? Really, till 2017, 18, I think. Because it has to be right, doesn't it?
We didn't get to see her live because we went to Canada with the Julie show.
Yeah,
I remember I think you and I had about 4 or 5 ideas, and we sat outside. One of them was Ghost Bollocks. There's a few shows that will still get made.
One day.
We just said, let's sit with all these ideas. And then, as you said, the Kate Bush show kind of rose to the surface, and we both just went, now's the time. And for an idea to stay that long, it just obviously needed to be the right time for us as makers and for the world. And then, of course, we made it, and then COVID. So we had to sit on it for another 2 years.
Yeah, and I think the other thing that I remember back then was that we both most certainly had a bit of a summit meeting saying, if we do this show based on another prolific artist, how do we dodge the bullet of repeating ourselves in the same way Julie Maddie Deeply? And thank God we did. And again, I could never describe how we did that, but I'm so glad they exist and they're both very successful in their own rights. I'm so proud of doing that. And I'm not really sure what the formula was, but it was one thing that you said to me once in the Soho Theatre. We'd seen a show or something, and you said to me, we need to concentrate on her culture, her output, her pop videos, her imagery. And that was really when, oh, yeah, okay, cool. And then when we read the book, we were like, actually, Kate is so private that you can't make a show about her because it's all conjecture, and she quite rightly keeps everything personal. So obviously it had to be about her music. Whereas Judy Maddie Deeply is most certainly about your obsession with Julie Andrews and going through, charting through what happened in her career and her life in relation to her music. Whereas this was the key, wasn't it? It was like, actually, we're concentrating on her music, which then, if you remember, led us to the documentary about the tribute acts. Because I don't know if anybody knows, but there was a tribute act theatre in, I think it was Newcastle, but it's not there anymore. And that was fascinating. That was it, wasn't it? It was the moment where we both went, this is it, because it charted acts that looked like and performed as the act they're tributing, and the fandom around them, like people coming up and seeing their idol recreated in front of them. And I remember thinking there's a little bit of snobby around tribute acts. But when you watch this documentary, you're like, no, they absolutely are there. They're in the moment and they love it. So, let's address that and then give it a bit of an extra spin, as it were. And then who knows how we came up with the rest. But that's my memories of that.
And I think obviously for Kate, I mean, there are a lot of tribute acts, Cloudbusting being the most well-known one. But, having now met a lot of those tribute acts, and they are so passionate, so genuinely love her music, but they were also kind of providing a sense of communion and connection for her fans, because obviously for 35 years she didn't perform. And I think the last bit that fell into place for me was when we went to see Babooshka at the Moth Club, who are a fantastic American tribute act, and they each kind of almost rotate an era of Kate, and there's sense of humor in it, but you're definitely at a gig. And then at the end of the show, obviously they did Wuthering Heights, and we looked at the audience and we realized that they were performing this song. And obviously not, we won't give away the ending of our show for people that haven't seen it, but we realized there was something about the fans taking ownership of the music. And then I think it was a hard show to make, partly because there were so many songs and we sort of had endless paper around the wall of the room. I remember that you gave me a couple of exercises where you just said, right, here's all the songs, make a show arc that could fit those songs. And we had the songs that had to be in or people would kill us. And then the songs that we personally would be upset not to be in there. And then we went through what songs have we got the backing tracks for? So
What's easy to find, but yeah, it's because it went from being in my kitchen, didn't we, to being in a space that we hired. And that was I remember we did a lot more work before that, didn't we? We did lots of kind of cerebral stuff for going, who is this show for? What type of thing do we want to make? What do we not want to make? And then we wrote reviews, didn't we, of our work before we'd actually even done anything. And bizarrely, some of that language is actually in the show copy, isn't it? It makes it through, because the word cult was something we ran towards. We were like, there's almost like a cult-like, Kate-like, following to Kate, because you're a Kate Bush fan for life, no matter what she does. And that idea of communion in the room, again, Babooshka. And I've still got the video of us. I filmed the Wuthering Heights at the end around the Moth Club, and they're all just like singing Wuthering Heights way louder than what Babooshka are on the stage. And that was really key. And then we continued on, but it was almost, we knew that we were kind of dancing, for want of a better word, within the tribute act genre. But the flip to our show is, well, maybe we won't share it on here because people can come and see it, but it's not what you think. It's a tribute in another way, or in fact, it's almost like 15 mini tributes in some sense, isn't it? It's
I would say each song gets a different treatment, gets looked through a slightly different lens. And the other thing that we did in the so one of the things that we like to do together is that we'll both set each other a challenge to create a piece of sort of flash spontaneous performance. And I think that's really helpful because both of us perform, both of us direct, both of us write.
Yeah.
And on this, we knew I was the performer. But so many things in it and so many aspects of clowning were so helpful for me to see. And I can't see now what came from your improvisation or my improvisation, but
Mm.
our DNA as two people is so interwoven in every, things that made us laugh, or just the idea of me wearing a mop on my head, just ludicrous things like that. But the other key ingredient, I think, is you and I both do this, is that we share the work early. I've been doing a lot of sort of coaching people on solo theatre making, and it's a necessary but excruciating part that you have to invite an audience in, a carefully chosen and curated audience, to check whether what you're making is landing. And in that early sharing, no lighting and no wonderful costume changes and nothing that makes the show feel cooked, I was still playing a character. I was playing a kind of weird Irish spirit kikimora preacher. And the
Which is the Royal
experience,
Vauxhall Tavern. Yeah,
yeah,
well,
oh, even
from
then,
the
yeah.
preview. Yeah. You were still not you, as it were.
And I think that's the thing, is that this kind of work, because the audience are so essential, the last bits of cooking have to be done live and in the room. And I think you and I both love that, and I know you've been doing that with Bobby, the Bobby Kennedy experience. Now it's out on the road, is that
Mm.
it's still evolving and it's still changing, and that's exciting. And I think we've certainly, when we did Night Bus, because it was a different process, there was a feeling that this script gets locked off at a certain point. And I think I've learned that my comfort place is that you've got a really solid foundation of a piece, but that there's room in it to evolve and to grow.
Mm.
It has to, because people have,
Yeah, absolutely. I'll come back to that in a minute because I want to know more about what it's like now, because I haven't seen it for a whole year. I'll be interested. Yeah, that's just going back to the making process. This is also for any theatre makers out there, because I get asked the question quite often: why does it say made by Sarah-Louise Young and Russell Lucas? And even John, our wonderful producer, he says to me, "Why is it made by?" And I told him, he says, "So it's like making a cake then." I went, yes. And we selected that really because, as you've just alluded to, it's the idea of actually, we both directed it, we both choreographed it, we both devised it, we both wrote it, and you're the performer of it. And we can't unlock that anymore.
no.
We cannot remember for the life of me who thought of what. And that's a really good thing, because we both know that we both own it, and we have creative ownership over it. And it was so satisfying to use made by, because I'm traditionally known as a director, and I've definitely had to call people up on it and say, on this one I'm not,
Yeah.
because the director doesn't serve me for this particular making process. And it's really liberating, and I share it with anybody who wants to do it. And I actually stole it from Dr. Brown, because the way he works, and there was something that he did, can't remember what it was. It was the lovely show that he made with the man with the latex penis that was going through the legs. Can't remember. It was on Netflix anyway, and it said made by Nate. Say again. Nate, yes.
Yeah,
And it was made with, and I was like, that's so nice. That is so lovely. That's the way to do it. And the young Vic have started changing. It doesn't say directed by, it says direction by. I was like, that's lovely. It's much more fluid. Because I think as the roles change in our trade, I think the director is becoming something else. It's, because we're all having to change hats, and now we're using the term theatre makers and stuff. And so made by, for this one, most certainly was. But then for the Bobby Kennedy experience, it went right back to directed by Sarah-Louise Young, the Bobby Kennedy experience, because you were coming in as a dramaturgical shaper, and the content was kind of already there. It's almost like taking a script, isn't it? And then you direct it, as it were.
And you say the word theatre maker, of course, we must not, there is a book that you've written.
Oh yeah, where is my book? Let me advertise it. I'm so bad at advertising.
For theatre makers.
Yes, look.
Which is brilliant. And I would like to say it's a provocation, it's a kick up the arse.
It's an intervention, is what I tell people.
Yeah.
But yeah, thank you. Yeah, I forgot to plug that. It's doing really well, and bizarrely really well in USA and Canada, which I found out a couple of weeks ago. So that's super nice, and I get lovely comments from people I've never met. Yeah, I'm very, very proud of it. So yeah, 300 Thoughts for Theatre Makers is there.
Buy that book.
I think it's on sale at the moment.
But I think it's worth saying, because the world is changing. But I talk to people all the time who are saying, well, I've got this great idea for a show, but I'm just waiting to see if I've got funding. And we didn't have funding. We made it in our living rooms. I hand stitched a wig made of bits of Velcro. But we were very careful about where we invested money. We got brilliant photos done by Steve Olathan, and we got Tom Shaw to do the makeup. So we spent money on the things that we knew really mattered. And I think one item of costume, but we really made it on a shoestring and on our own terms. And you mentioned our wonderful producer, John Mackay, but we produced the show ourselves. So again, with that made by isn't just what's on the stage. It was also made by that every line of copy, the photographs, the costumes, every aspect, the lighting design was between the two of us. And because I trust John immensely, and lovely David Johnson, who is sadly not with us, but I had known them from a very long time, they've never interfered creatively. But it mattered to us that we made the show on our own terms first and brought it up to the PBA fringe. And amazingly, you know, it ignited and we were standing room only from sort of day 2. But I think it's very easy for theatre makers to wait for permission, wait for funding.
Yeah.
Actually, you know, if you've got a good story and you've got a good theatre making brain, then just make it.
Yeah, and I've always raised Kate Bush experience to me in any workshops I teach, because you know there's the initial ego of yourself. You know, you want to make this thing, and then there's the other one. You go, yeah, but you've also got to honor the thing you're making, and then you've also got to sell the thing you're making. It's all of that. And even about Kate Bush, I think we managed to solve the whole thing because we're very passionate about taking care of Kate Bush in our show and the music and the experience of the fans. I'm a massive fan. You know, I'd never ever harm any of the music. I want to reassess it or have a look at it again. That's the quest behind the thing. But then there's also the thing, right? But we want to work. Let's say it. We want to work. We want to get the show out there. And also, we took a risk with Edinburgh because we put our own money into it, and that was a risk. But also, our experience, like you say, if you learn to become a theatre maker, our experience then ends up joining together. And you knew, like the thing I learned off of you was the footfall thing. You talk about footfall in Edinburgh. Make sure you choose a kind of a space that you know is right for your show, but also you get enough people that come past the building. It's like such a massive like thing to, you must not forget about, because don't get the one that's up the hill around the corner and, near a shoe shop. You've got to get something in the middle if you can, or, on the footfall, as it were. But yeah, I learned a lot from that for sure. And were there any more questions on the Facebook? Can you remember?
I didn't have any publicly. Someone messaged me privately and said, "What's next?"
Okay, I have a question for you then. So now, because you've done, gosh, how many? You're about to start another leg of the show, which is cracking on.
We hit 100 shows in Edinburgh. So I think by the time we've done this tour and I've taken it to Australia, which I'm doing in June, July, then I think we'll be somewhere up to 200 performances.
Right. So speaking as a performer who's done a show over and over and over, not to that degree, but I know that sometimes there's always a moment that you look forward to. So during the show, is there a moment you go, can't wait for that bit? Or there's a bit coming around, I love this bit, it's so much fun. Is there one of those moments?
Yeah, they shift and they move. There's quite a lot of audience participation in the show, and we've been very careful that it's very safely managed and people opt in to that. But because at the beginning of the show, when I get to chat to people, I'm obviously scouting for people. So when I know, that's the perfect person for that moment, then it allows me to really savor that moment coming up. And so I think for me, the moment we get a couple up to dance, and sometimes if I've managed to get a story out of someone, I mean, we've had mums and sons, we've had dads and daughters. When we did the preview at the Glory, there was a woman, and it was her ex-daughter-in-law. So the relationship had ended, but they had hung on to their friendship, and this was their first kind of time out together. And they just sobbed and hugged the whole way through. And so to see that and to know that, I mean, it's just so delicious. So there's something about the moment that they've said yes, and they're on the stage and the music begins, and I'm not even singing or speaking. There's just this kind of like 6 seconds where I'm going, oh yeah, we got it right. But there's lots of those moments. But then what I also love is that the show contains the possibility of anarchic, unexpected chaos. It's tightly disciplined in some moments, and other bits because that's what keeps it alive. And I love being surprised, and I have been surprised and delighted by things that I was not expecting. And
it's funny because I don't see it as often. I say this to you and Michael whenever I come back to Julie Mad Deeply. It's always like returning to a marriage where your partner has moved the furniture all around. You go into the house and you're like, what's happened? Because the show's not the same beast, and of course it shouldn't be, because it evolves as the performer takes it out on the road and you learn your little peaks and troughs or whatever. But I think the thing that I always enjoy when I watch it is I don't know what's coming next. which is really interesting because I can't remember the order. So I kind of do have that experience of staying out of it, and I don't quite know where you're going. But I think the moment I love the most is when we go into running up that hill into the finale and all of that bit, and I won't go into how that works. And it's what you pull out of the suitcase. Again, I'm not going to reveal that in case people haven't seen. And it's because say again?
The audience reaction sometimes to that is
yes,
fabulous.
and it was a happy accident because I remember exactly when you did it. And again, it was a kind of an accident, but I remember stopping you saying, "Stop, that's it." And it's because you did it with your back turned. And then I said, "That looks like the thing," which I cannot say because you need to see the show. And then I remember, again, we don't know how this all happened, but it was a case of keeping the running up that hill music going whilst we introduced the next imagery is the thing that just, even when I watch it, makes you just go, ooh, because we've got the thing coming that we've always wanted, but we kind of forgotten about because the rest of the show makes you forget it. And then the thing comes, which again, we're not must mention what it is, but you go, ooh, and I'm very, very proud of that moment. Because it is, like you say, the audience get it, and it's a goosebumpy moment, I think. But yeah, cool.
It's interesting, that thing of whether the piece is ever finished, because although there is that energy and lifeblood running through it, I always think that performers, there's like a piece of elastic, and you kind of stretch it, and you keep adding things, and you keep sort of trying things, and then at a certain point, if you stray too far from the original intention of the piece of elastic comes and thwacks you back in the face. And this hasn't happened in this piece, but in the Julie show, because I've been doing it for such a long time, there are little bits where I'd kind of got used to improvising and just amusing myself and going off down meandering lines and creating entire characters. And it was really helpful. We took the show to America, so we had a bit of a reboot, and you came back into the room, and actually it was kind of humbling, but also really helpful to go, let's just dial it right back to the original version we ever did. And then if those moments are still valid, if they're still part and authentic, then they'll come back in naturally. And so I think I'm always reminded to kind of like an Etch-a-Sketch, to sort of refresh. You know, you might have found a fun, wonderful game to play the night before, but you must start every show afresh. And just remember that what the initial, and I think I love the beginning of the show because we do And Dream of Sheep, and it's partly there to be sung straight to reassure the super fans that we're not going to mess around, and we're not going to, because there's a lot of anxiety around fans that the show is going to only be funny and that we're going to somehow take the piss. And as you said, you know, we are both massive Kate Bush fans. I could not be more respectful of her work, but she's also a clown, and she's all those amazing videos with the comedy strip. You know, I think her eccentricity and her clown is in there. But there is also this, you know,
David,
we're going to sing the songs. It's going to be all right.
You're going to be. We can do it. It's the opening. David Menken, our mutual friend, he said to me, because we came and saw the sharing of Royal Vox was having the very first time we did it, I think, and he came up to me and just said, "Don't ever change that opening song." And I was like, "Yeah, no, I felt that. I always felt that was the one." It was like, "That's the one." And it was lovely to have him. He literally grabbed my hand. "Don't ever change the opening," because it's a very Kate-like opening, but we won't share what it is necessarily, how it works. But yeah, I have a question. What are you working on now? Have you got anything new coming up as a performer?
I'm actually working. I'm going to be on someone else's show for a bit. I'm doing a brand new musical in Europe, and it's created by this amazing director, dramaturg, genius. He was the he's just left the National Theatre of Belgium, but we've got the composer is Polish, the lyricist is English, so I'm going out there to do that. But I'm actually doing a bit of directing. I'm directing a Gertrude Lawrence piece, but I'm touring this. But I'm now, because I made a show last year called The Silent Treatment, which was about my own relationship with my voice and trauma and the body. So that's getting a little bit of an outing as well. So there's usually about 5 or 6 projects on the go, but I'm composting a few ideas. But
Right.
the problem with performing everything is there's only one of me. So there aren't enough days in the year to perform everything that I want to perform.
Yeah. And Kate Bush is a tour. It needs you.
Workout. Although I would love to see you do the show.
Say again?
I'd love to see you do the Kate Bush show just once.
Well, ironically, we're coming across Kate Bush because, as you know, I'm making a show with Tracy Collins. If people don't know, Tracy Collins used to do the Tina Turner Tea Urn Lady, and also does Audrey Hepburn. and she's working on Elvis Leslie right now.
Brilliant. Yeah, she's wonderful. So
So
you're doing a Charles and Diana show, aren't you?
we are. Well, it's called Charles and Diana the Cabaret. We kind of know that it's going to be in September. It's going to be the first kind of outing of it. And what's funny is because it's not quite what you think, obviously, but I'm not going to share too much of it because it's still very, very early stages. But it's not really going to be, the life of Charles and Diana, because that would be weird. But come along and you'll see in September. But what's funny is we're using it's kind of a framing devices from 1980 to 1989. And using the music, and obviously Kate Bush has come up. We're like, oh God, I've got to put Kate Bush in it. So the part of me is like, I can't sing Running Up That Hill because Sarah-Louise will come and watch it.
You can.
So we think maybe
I was curious to know how your making process. You've obviously, I mean, you've directed her before, I think, and helped her develop shows.
Yeah, we
so
did a little bit on Tina Lady, yeah.
What's that like to be in the room knowing you're both going to be sharing a stage together? Because I know at one point we talked about you and me doing that, and it ended up being the solo show, but that must be a fun dynamic.
It is really fun. I mean, I've always gone very well with Tracy. I mean, who can't go well with Tracy? She's just an absolute riot. And we were thinking about it separately, apparently, because when I said to her, do you want to do something? And she said, oh, just back and ask you that. So you go, okay, right, there's something there. And then we started in August. We just did a few days. We've always done 2 or 3 days every single month since August. We just kept that going. And then got the initial idea, then we're boiling it down. And obviously there's always the thing of, can you perform together? Have you got the chemistry, etc.? And not that we ever really asked that question. We just kept on rehearsing. And then by the time you're, just pissing yourself lying on the floor, then I think you're okay, really. But now we've got the really exciting stage, which this stage, which is you've got the thing now. You've started to think about the imagery and the costumes. You've actually probably got the songs, and you've got to the point where you can pick and go, right, that needs to be there, that needs to be there. So you're kind of like getting the dramaturgical landscape going in relation to what you actually want to make, not what you want to put in. So now we're getting to that. It's telling us what to do, really, which is lovely. And then we started buying makeup and looking at how to do 80s eyeliner and all sorts, because let's face it, I'm a 52-year-old man, so I'm going to look like I don't know, Leonard Cohen. Probably. But
it's fair to say that both you and I occasionally would get excited about shopping. I think we bought the headdress for the Kate Bush show before we knew we were drawn to the feathers because there was sort of
bought it first,
Ariel and everything. But sometimes you just, and the images that Steve did were made before we knew what the show was. But sometimes it's a bit like writing the review. You put all the ingredients out there and something takes a flavor and you go, oh, that's what it was. I just didn't know what it was until I saw it. So sometimes you're not always working necessarily, downstream. Sometimes you're upstream and jumping out the pond in all sorts of directions.
Yeah, the wig came first, bizarrely. You've had a couple of people, haven't you, like who actually worked with Kate Bush come and see the show. Is that correct? Did I imagine that?
Yeah. One of her original backing singers from the Tour of Life, 1979. And I had a guy who'd worked on Before the Dawn as well, which is really lovely. And of course people go, oh, what would you be, would you like her to come and see it? Yes, of course I would love her to come and see it, but she would have to come in deep disguise, because I think the audience they wouldn't know how to behave with her in the room. And it does need to be an evening without Kate Bush. But I would, of course,
a private viewing, her and her mates, selected audience, that would be the way in.
But I think with both this and the Kate Bush show, and I would imagine with the Bobby Kennedy show, if any of his family came, that we've always had pinned to the top of the notice board in our heads that if they were to see it, they would love it.
I did have someone in Greenwich. I had a man who worked for Ted Kennedy, which is Bobby's brother. His wife surprised him and bought him a ticket, and he came out to me after. He said, thank you so much for telling the story. So you do, thank God I didn't know you were in.
Yeah.
But then thank you for the comment. And it's lovely, isn't it? Because you've got to be able to just put the person you're discussing almost aside, really. And so having Kate Bush and even having Julie Andrews in the room would just be like horrific in some ways. And people who've known Julie Andrews have come and seen the show.
Yeah, lots of childhood friends and people who knew her and it's lovely. But of course, I think the audience would just implode if Kate Bush came.
And it's done with love. It's done with love, you know, and you know,
Love and danger, my two favorite ingredients of all theatre making. Love
yeah.
and danger.
We
There has
should
to be.
probably, we should quickly mention Tom, our choreographer, for Running
Yes.
High Bush, and how his choreography actually ended up in it, but not in the way that he thought. How did that happen?
Tom Jackson Greaves, who is a wonderful director in his own right, as well as a wonderful choreographer. And we just said, I think the challenge was, could you watch some of Kate Bush's videos and then just kind of, we did a day at the dance attic just to sort of help me get into some of her kind of shapes. And quite independently, he had watched loads of videos and he'd just kind of made his own language. And he invented these phrases, which were a short form for him. One of them, which was the champagne whip crack. And so we used them, but then they actually ended up being into the language of the, and then one review thinks that these genuinely are the names of the moves that she has created. But that was wonderful. I think that was a good example of the way I think that you and I pick and mix make. So you go, okay, what does this show need? Oh, right, one of us needs to upskill and learn puppetry. Or, oh, actually, hold on a second, I need to learn how to sing Babooshka in Russian. So I had two friends coach me on that. And I think sometimes you don't know what you need until you're making it. And he was wonderful. I think that day, it was one day, but it was invaluable, I think, to the piece.
Yeah, and also we did that thing which we had to do with Julie Maddy deeply, was that we had to go back to an evening without Kate Bush because we were asked to make a second 40-minute segment. And thankfully, we'd been through it with Julie Maddy deeply, hadn't we? Where we had this hour and suddenly had to extend it, and we had to do it with an evening without Kate Bush. Not had to, but it was part of the, you know, the deal, etc. It was make it longer, and we managed to dodge it, and also it gave us the chance to look at more modern Kate Bush music. And if anybody comes and sees the extended version, they'll see you dressed as a mountain.
Well, I've always said, if I'm going to have an interval, then I need some amazing thing. So with the Julie show, there's a huge alpine dress that was made by Anna Braithwaite, which is brilliant. And in the extended 2-act version of the Kate Bush show, we had these incredible prop puppet eyeballs that were made for us by Plunge Creatives, who do all the costumes for The Masked Singer.
Yeah.
And because, you know, you make a thing and you love it and you don't really want to expand it, but of course this is the nature of UK touring, is that you often have to put an interval in so they can sell drinks, and that's a very sort of cynical reason to expand your show. And we thought we must find a creative, I mean, it's an economic necessity, it's totally fine, but you don't want to be going, oh, I've got to expand this because I have to. You want to say, I want to expand this because I've got an amazing opportunity to go deeper or to add in some other flavor. So it was fun, and now I love doing the 2-act version. It's
I need to see the 2-act version because so anybody who sees the 2-act version who hasn't seen it, we actually break into Kate's house in some sort of weird way.
We have our
own. You're dressed as a thief.
It's a bit like the Ninth Wave. Yeah, there's definitely a bit, because I disappear really from connecting with the audience for a bit and go into this kind of strange surreal world.
Version,
and this is when I think about that you're on stage with me, because there are moments when I'm dressed as a mountain and I'm in this giant snowflake head, and I'm thinking you're actually with me because you're here now with me on stage as I'm doing this, because I can see a couple of people, it's like the ignition light goes on and they're going, oh, and then other people are just going,
what?
But that's okay, they can go.
I mean, that's Kate.
Yeah,
that is Kate.
And then they emerge, they get spat out the other side, and they're like, the thing that gets said to me more often than anything else, people come, I meet people after the show, I love doing it, it's really lovely to hear people's stories and experiences, and they go, that is not what I was expecting, but it was brilliant. Which is a PR machine's nightmare, but for us it's an absolute joy. I don't want people, sometimes people message the Facebook page and they go, what is this show about? How does it work? What's in it? What are the songs? I need to know exactly what it is before I come. And all I can say is you have to just take a risk and come and be part of the experience, because the show doesn't exist without you. It doesn't exist without the audience. So you come and you bring you, and then we'll find out what the show is.
Should we wrap it up and I will tell them when the dates are? Should we get some dates out there?
Yeah, we could do. I've realized it's gone very dark. It's gone very dark. I'll
get the dates while you get your light, or if you put yourself up, right? So
I'll Tunbridge.
Oh, really? Okay, here we go. I've got them up. Yes, Tunbridge, Friday the 13th. They were going to Newcastle, Underline, Cardiff, Aberystwyth, Hexham, Huddersfield, Liverpool, Buxton, Milford Haven, Chipping Norton, Harrogate, Manchester, Banbury, Poole, Hedge-End, Salisbury, Coventry, Exeter, Bristol, Southampton, Leicester. Whoa. See you in May.
No, then I'm off to I'm off to Europe.
Oh, okay. Fair enough.
It'll be
Wow, amazing.
And you've got a couple of bobbies coming up too, haven't you?
Yes, I've been rehearsing today. You'll be glad to know. Yes, I'm doing the Bobby Kennedy Experience next week in Guildford. Thursday, Friday in Guildford. It's selling really well as well, which is so like, ooh, thank gosh.
And like you, I'm
Um,
itching to see it because I haven't seen it since way back in
yeah, and
Cambridge.
you're
Excited.
touring, aren't you? Yeah, you can't make
Yeah.
these dates. And then the week after, I'm at the Tabar Theatre in Chiswick, which again is selling really well because Greenwich Theatre is sold out. So there's definitely a market for this, and it was always a bit of a rogue choice, this old Bobby Kennedy. And what's nice is that people are coming. They find, right? You find your show, you find the tribe, because we had lecturers from the Greenwich University come to see it, and she says, "Oh, I do politics. This was so interesting." And I can't ruin it because of the the end, the way it ends. But she said, "Oh, it was like you were disappearing off into a tunnel at the end." I was like, "Wow, it's so lovely what people bring to theatre and their expectation and what they get out of it." And it's going really well. So yes, thank you for the plug and the plug for the book. Cool.
So I guess we should wrap this up. But it's fun. It's nice to see you. And this is Facebook Live.
And no,
Two
it didn't work for us, did it? What's your favorite Kate Bush song before we wrap up our Facebook version?
I love And Dream of Sheep, but I think the one that I physically enjoy singing the most is probably at James and the Cold Gun, because it's just like such a fantastic, rip-roaring, explosive, amazing song.
Okay.
But And Dream of Sheep for me, and
Yeah.
the as well. I can't. There's too many. What about you?
Right. If ever there was a third act, we'd have to open with Kite.
I also love Deeper Understanding. And that
Yeah.
video, I mean, that was nearly in there. Deeper Understanding.
Yeah.
That video was the lovely Robbie Coltrane, who's no longer with us.
Yeah, there's a lot. There is so much. There could be a third act. Should we say goodbye to our Facebook friend?
Yes, let's say goodbye. Thank you for tuning in.
Yes.
Thank you for
Thank
tuning
you.
in.
Sorry for the errors and the
Pre-recorded.
technical car crash. Goodbye, Facebook Live.